get up, and on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down, all right? And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down.
And welcome in, one and all, Kneecaps Nation. We are ready to roll on this episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. Vince Progar, happy to be joined, as always, by the man across the way, Phil Byrne. And Phil, pretty active week for you, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah, I moved into a new place, and that takes a toll, on you mentally and physically, and it's good to kind of get unwinded, a couple days removed from it, and kind of move on and get to talk some Lions. Vince, it's mid-July officially, and training camp's right around the corner. We're about a month out from preseason games. I know it seems like we probably haven't had a ton to talk about really in the last month. Well, that's because it's the off season, right? This is the time when these players go on vacation, they travel or whatever, but
weddings. We've had a lot of weddings that have taken place with Panay Sewell just tying the knot over the weekend. Jared Goff and his longtime fiance just a couple of weeks ago before that. Rodrigo got married, I think, last weekend. So now's the time to get all that done before it's time to get down to business.
And this team has a lot of business in front of them. They really, really do. And, it's interesting. We're going to continue to go through like our training camp preview breakdowns of positions and things like that. But another week passes, and it's, you got to credit Brad Holmes, because the Lions are still, maybe not in like the secondary necessarily, but a lot of these preseason rankings are coming out and they're going offense, defense, special teams, or position ranks. And time again, the Lions are ranking top 5 for what they have in place here going into the season. And that's a credit of a weird feeling, knowing that we have one of the deepest teams in the NFL. There's unreal expectations on this team now, it seems like. But Vince, we got a damn fine football team here in the Motor City.
We sure do, and that's not something that we're terribly used to. And I know we've hinted at it over the course of this offseason, but in a couple of weeks from now, we are actually going to get some firsthand takes from some actual longtime Lions fans out there. I've planted a few seeds over this past week to try and gauge some interest, and it's pretty awesome how people are willing to step up and tell their story. So not necessarily this next episode next week, but as we move in with training camp, that'll be kind of be a nice thing to weave in with all of our training camp discussions. So that's to come. We'll get to that. But Phil, one thing I did notice last week is that we just had our 26th episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. And while you might not be thinking, oh, that's not a round number, who cares about number 26? Well, that means that we've had exactly half of a year's worth of podcast episodes under our belt. And like you said, Phil, we're at a point where, there's only so much that's going on, but we're still managing to crank out at least a 40-minute podcast, if not closer to an hour a lot of times. Yeah. Even with the fact that we're in a dead period in the NFL. So it's just amazing how time flies through the offseason. We're going to be getting to some really exciting stuff here before too much more time passes.
Yeah, time really does fly very, very fast. January seems like it was a long ways away, but the NFL is a 24-hour business, 7 days a week. There's always something coming out, regardless of the day going on. There's always something to talk about. With this Lions team, with this interest, with where it is, there's always something to be able to talk about. And for those of you out there listening and still with us, I know we're probably not at peak audience numbers like we had when the playoffs are going on. We've yet to really get back into the groove of how we want to do the show when we actually get live games once again. So I say thank you for your patience and thank you for your listenership through all this. But we still got a long ways to go, and we're going to continue to make this even better heading into the 24 season.
Without question. So we'll kind of start off with more of a lighthearted topic. So there's obviously been a lot of buzz around Hard Knocks over these last handful of off season. I think we're going back 15 to 20 off seasons worth of Hard Knocks
Yeah.
episodes on the HBO. And they've started to incorporate some other things more recently. So they had the quarterback series last season where I think Mahomes was involved, Kirk Cousins was part of it, and I think Marcus Mariota was in on that series as well, if I'm not mistaken. I never got into it just because I never got to invested in any of those quarterbacks. Even myself as a Michigan State football fan, I've never really been too much of a Cousins as a pro quarterback kind of guy, so that didn't appeal to me in a whole lot of ways. Now they come out with the wide receiver series, and one of the receivers that is participating in this season of that show is our very own Amon Ra St. Brown. Now, it's been a pretty active and chaotic few weeks at the Progar household, so that's still something that I need to double back on and dive into. Phil, you've had a chance to take in the first episode. So, what I
Yeah.
want to know from
Yeah.
you is what are your thoughts on the series so far? And more importantly, what do you think about the way St. Brown has been depicted by the series and maybe a few key takeaways without maybe necessarily giving too much away to some of us that haven't gotten into it yet, but your
Mhm.
overall take on what you've seen so far, particularly as it pertains to St. Brown?
So with Amon Ra, with him, you're getting a little bit more of a uh, look outside of, you know, fantasy football numbers or Lions stats or the guy wearing number 14 for the Lions. Again, this is a really great opportunity for him to kind of get his name out there, expand a little bit. I know if you're an NFL diehard, you know who this guy is, but for more of the casual fan, especially because the Lions are really just recently been on the the come up, if you will. People don't know much about him. Okay, so the first episode, it kind of goes into a little bit more paint by numbers that we as Lions fans know about him. Like he's going to outwork everyone in the room. They go through, the portion where he has his 2023 goals that he wrote down on a sheet of paper. They have his stat line, which he ends up hitting by I think like 10 yards or something like that. So that was 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns. And he got there. And he has also the guys who were drafted in front of him, of course. And we as Lions fans know this. It's been just as common as, hey, did you know Matthew Stafford and Clayton Kershaw used to be high school team, or not high school team, but used to play little league together. It's one of those like just random stories that we hear during every Lions game about all the players drafted in front of Amon Ra. But with him, you truly get the idea that he is going to outwork everyone else in the room. The other guys depicted in the series, Justin Jefferson, of course, he is probably the biggest, maybe him or Jamar Chase right now. I would say are probably like the two biggest names for receivers in the NFL. Tyreek Hill maybe up there as well. So those two guys are really big, and then you have Debo Samuel and George Kittle on the same team. First episode dives a little bit more into like George Kittle behind the scenes from what I kind of got through and everything. Justin Jefferson, you get that he is Justin and this low key guy, and then he has his alter ego Jet, as he likes to call it. So it's kind of like his,
The egos of some
superhero
of
kind of
these
thing.
receivers
Yeah,
never ceases to amaze me. And I think that's what
where
endears Amon Ross St. Brown to
yeah,
me so much is
he's
that you don't get an ounce of
yeah.
baby, you don't get an ounce of diva whatsoever. And I think that
So,
works against him in some
yeah,
ways as far as what his overall, I hate to use the word reputation, but maybe his standing among NFL fans as a whole is because you don't see this guy kicking and screaming and belly aching and pulling the
yeah,
Brandon Ayuk crap and talking and
yeah.
talking and this and talking and that and everything like that. It's refreshing actually to see somebody who actually goes out and plays the game the right way.
So it's not so much about his personality, but you get a lot with his dad. You get a lot with his dad in this show and kind of his family and the St. Browns and having the podcast with his brother
Mr.
and stuff.
Universe.
Yeah. So there's a great soundbite in there where it's going through one of the early games. I can't remember which one it is offhand now, but his dad is like literally telling him to drink Coca-Cola at halftime and that it is better for cramping than Gatorade. So I don't, listen, he's Mr. Olympia,
If
he's
there
a
were
bodybuilder.
anybody
Yeah.
without the
Yeah.
letters MD at the end of their last name
Yeah.
to speak to what is better for your body, I think it would be Mr. Universe himself.
Yeah. So I'm sure it's like just a little bit of it, and not just like, down in a
Here's
2 liter
half
or
a 2
something.
liter. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, like that seems very counterintuitive. But here's the craziest thing. Amon Ra St. Brown tore his oblique completely off the bone, and yet he missed one game last season, and he still hit his stats. And that is why he got his money. That is why he got his money. Um, Guy just busts his
Spoiler alert, the
ass.
season probably doesn't pan out the way it
Yeah.
does if he misses more than just that one singular game last year.
I think I saw, so I only got through the first episode. There's 8 or 10 episodes or something like that. The last episode goes into, it looked like from the episode previews, goes into, of course, the NFC Championship game. So they'll have Amon Ra mic'd up, and then the two Niners, of course, as well. But it's really well produced. Peyton, had the thing with the quarterback show, and then about halfway through, not to spoil anything, like Randy Moss pops up on the screen. He's like, "Whoa, Peyton, this is the receiver show. I'm taking it from here, man." That's my really bad Randy Moss impression, but you get the idea. It's a good show.
It was
It's
actually
quality.
decent. It was actually decent.
Yeah. But anyways, it's a good show. Definitely at least catch the first couple of episodes. Highly recommend it for any Lions fans, especially since we really don't have much else going on right now.
Absolutely. You're listening to this episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. Vince and Phil, along with you, just touched on the wide receiver program as it pertained to Amon Ra St. Brown. And that's kind of a nice transition point into our next topic of discussion, which is continuing to preview our squad as we head into training camp in the next few weeks. So, hey, why not continue on with the wide receiver group? So, we talked about St. Brown. What more can you say about him? We'll be talking about him all season long. Another guy we've talked a lot about is Jameson Williams. And he really came on strong later goings of the season after coming off that suspension where he served 6 games away from the team at the start of the season. It was a little bit slow getting him back in the swing of things. And later in the season, right around December, is when he really started to pick things up. And I think his performance in the NFC Championship game kind of lost a lot of luster because of everything else that happened with the drop passes by Reynolds and the way that the game slipped away and the wheels fell off the wagon. And I think that kind of got lost in the shuffle of just how well JMO played in that NFC Championship game. And I almost wonder if that kind of cracked the code a little bit for what we can see out of him moving forward into this season. What do you think, Phil?
Yeah, no, I think it did. I think it did. And I think the one thing that we've been kind of on the fence with him a little bit is he hasn't had the volume. Like a lot of times, the most catches he'll have in a game are like 3 or 4, whereas you got, Laporta and St. Brown out there catching 6, 7, 8, 9 passes in a game.
And
You know
even
what I
his
mean?
direct comparison of a player, Tyreek Hill, is
Yeah.
definitely a volume guy. You can
Yeah.
definitely see games out there where he goes off for 12 catches in a game like there's
Yeah.
nothing to it.
But I think it's more just the ability that, okay, yes, maybe there isn't that extreme bona fide number 2 receiver that, oh, hey, maybe he could be the number 1 receiver on the Titans, kind of, or whoever is the worst team, the Panthers. You get the idea. Some talent, misshaped team or something like that. But
Yeah, I'd take him over 80-year-old Adam Thielen. Absolutely.
but you ain't feeling the Thielen. I don't know where we're going with this now. Okay, but anyways, but back to JMO. Like, if he only has 3 catches in a game, they're gonna be impactful plays. Like, not everything's gonna go for an 80-yard bomb, but just the ability to get a little bit of spook into the defense to know, hey, if you don't watch this guy, he's going to bust this thing out and take it to the house. he has that on every single time. Not only that he touches the ball, but just the fact when he is lined up out there and being able to do that. And you know, uh, another position we'll talk in a little bit more about is Jahmyr Gibbs, and maybe he doesn't have the extreme top end speed that JMO has, but they're going to complement each other, I think, very, very well. Where what's going to happen if you get St. Brown and Laporta on one side, and then Gibbs lined up, and he's next to JMO? You know, like that's a formation that I can't wait to see Ben Johnson roll out there, and then you get Montgomery in the backfield or something like that. You know, like that's exciting and that's enticing to know. You got two like extreme volume, great hands kind of guys on one side, two guys with speed on the other, and then you still got a running back that can break all hell loose. You know, in the backfield.
What excites me the most about JMO is thinking back to last season from stuff you heard from Ben Johnson or stuff you heard from Dan Campbell was a lot of basic stuff. It was a lot of got to make sure that JMO knows where he's supposed to be or time on task or yada, yada, yada. And there wasn't a whole lot of what do you like about the guy? What is he
Mm-hmm.
doing that jumps off the page in a positive manner? You weren't hearing any of that stuff last year. It seems like that's a whole 180 from the 2023 offseason. Dan Campbell even came out and said a few weeks ago that without question during the OTAs that JMO was the most improved and stellar performing player of the OTAs this year. So to actually finally get something from somebody in authority gives Lions fans a better feeling about number 9 heading into this year.
It's a couple different things. I think obviously he was hurt, you know, rookie season, and then was dealing with the, you know, the gambling stuff heading into last year. And I think there is a little bit of a motivating factor with him, knowing that he's not held back at all. It sounds by all counts and impression he's going to be counted upon to be a starter. And I'm sure he did have, you know, knowing where the Lions got and how good of an NFC championship game he had. I'm sure he had an amazing offseason. You know, it really doesn't take much for a guy like that to develop where, you know, and then of course he sees Amon Ra at the jugs machine every day, you know, and I'm sure that's motivating.
Well, and
And then
that was
seeing
a
what
big
he got
question
paid,
from the first couple of years, though, was why wasn't he using St. Brown as more of a, if nothing else, a motivating factor or a mentor of sorts? And it just didn't seem like he utilized his own teammate in a way that would have been productive. But now it just seems like a page has been turned and he has this desire in his mind to not look like he's damaged goods or anything like that. They can actually be a top end playmaker in this league. And just from what I've seen in the offseason, he's definitely taken really good steps to getting to that point.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. And you know, he's gonna be fun. Like I don't know how much he'll be on the field during preseason because I'm sure they do want to bubble wrap him to some degree. But and it probably won't be Goff throwing to him, you know, probably be Hendon Hooker, but still, like he's gonna be all eyes are going to be on him when he's on the field in preseason, you know, for whatever he's going to play. So that should be pretty exciting.
Khalif Raymond back at wide receiver as well. He always seems to come up in a big spot when the Lions need a big play made. He always seems to come up big. You're also going to see Khalif a lot in punt return duties as well. Donovan Peoples-Jones back. You may remember he got traded to the Lions at the trade deadline last season. Was never really able to establish a presence on the field necessarily. He got a few catches and mop-up duty, but was never able to make it look like he's an assertive force in the lineup, but he'll be back this year. Tom Kennedy still on the training camp roster. It seems like that's just a itch that the Lions can't fully scratch out of there, but Tom Kennedy still hanging around, and a couple of young depth guys in Antoine Green and Maurice Alexander, who they've drafted in the last couple of years, are on the training camp roster as well. So there's some of your other guys in the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parts of your wide receiver room.
Just gonna call my shot on this one right now. Because what the heck, it's mid-July. I'm gonna say that Michael Thomas is gonna be a Detroit Lion. I think that's
and how do you feel about that? Because I know it's been a minute since Michael Thomas has actually been a significant threat in the passing game for the New Orleans Saints. And it seems like there's been a little bit of maybe conduct stuff going on or stuff going on
Could
behind
be.
the scenes that people aren't fully in on. You think maybe he's lost a step, or you think he still has the chance to make a big impact in this league?
No, I think he has lost a step, but I think just being familiar with Dan Campbell, and coming in probably for cheap, and then just giving the lines a little bit more depth and a veteran piece as a fourth receiver, probably, maybe be on the field between like 5 to 8 plays, throughout the game. Um, I don't think it would take much for him to, even if it wasn't from a huge stat standpoint, make some sort of impact in this Lions receiver room. Because, um, listen, I love Khalif Raymond, but the fact that went from JMO and well, it's Khalif Raymond. I think he's great and he's awesome, but hey, we get injuries all the time in the NFL, and if we're gonna want to go to where we want to get, like, I just feel a little bit more comfortable
Do you
if we
remember
have
back
at least
during the
one veteran.
playoff run when Raymond was hurt and people like, we got to get Khalif Raymond back?
Yeah, exactly. But like I think that's just a move that we're just waiting on. He's probably not going to go through all of training camp, but I've just heard his name bandied around with the Lions, rumored for forever now this offseason, that I think we're just going to get him for cheap. Bring
And
him
do I
in.
think they made the right move not giving Josh Reynolds money? And I'm not using the NFC Championship game as the basis of my argument here, but would that have been money well spent in context? Probably not. So I think they're probably better off by doing what they did, but it never hurts to
Mhm.
have somebody who has caught passes in a big spot in this league before to
Yeah,
be a guy that you at least consider bringing on for a team that is very much in their window.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Because, um, I just think that there's other teams that are within striking distance of the Lions that maybe don't have the most solid receiver room. Kind of like the Packers, maybe. Like, I think they got some really, really nice young guys, but no one that, like, I think is an elite level, or anything like that. And I don't think the Saints are a playoff contender. You know, I think it's Tampa or Atlanta in that division. I could see the Saints winning maybe 5 games this upcoming year. I think they're just going to take a step back, but um, yeah, that's just my 2 cents on that.
Continuing with guys that Jared Goff or whomever is going to be lining up under center over the course of the season. We hope it's going to be Goff playing every single snap of this season, but we will have to
Mm-hmm.
obviously wait and see here. The tight end group, one of the more stacked tight end rooms in all of the NFL, quietly.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we've talked long and hard about Sam Laporta as he comes into his sophomore campaign this year. We'll see how he looks to build upon what he did as a rookie last year. Brock Wright back again. Shane Zylstra should be healthy enough to go for this year. James Mitchell still in the mix. He got some time at tight end later in the year as
Mm-hmm.
Laporta got a little bit nicked up. Brock Wright got a little bit nicked up. And as another possible depth piece, we got the fifth-year tight end out of the University of Michigan, Sean McCune, in that tight end room as well. So a lot of guys to pick from. You're not going to keep 5 tight ends on a roster,
No.
but there definitely shouldn't be any concern getting a fortified tight end group heading into this year.
So the way that that's a good group, traditionally most teams are going to play one tight end. Now the Lions have packages where they're throwing 2 tight ends, or they're going to use a heavier stacked offensive line, to get more blockers up there under Ben Johnson's offense. But truthfully, and while we love Laporta and we will always blast him with praise, if he were to miss one game or miss a half or something like that, I am fully confident that Brock Wright, while he doesn't have the receiving prowess or would be the go-to for Goff in a lot of passing situations,
Did
I
you
can
not watch that 2022 game against the New York Jets at the Meadowlands? Come on.
exactly. He's good. He's good, right? There's a reason the Lions and the Niners got into a bidding war for that guy. he would probably be a starter for at least 10 teams in this league, easily. James Mitchell, there's a reason we drafted him, right? So is he amazing? No, but he fills a depth void. He's good on special teams. And then what's the other Zilster doing? What's he up to? Is he in a used car dealership? I don't know. But
Could
the
be.
one that we got, Shane, he's not bad. He's not bad. So again, like you said, it's I don't think there's probably another. I don't know who Kelsey's backup is in Kansas City, or I guess who's Kittle's backup in San Francisco at this point. But I would have to assume that we have better depth than both of those teams at that position.
No doubt about it. And then topping things off on the offensive playmakers positions, they got the running backs. Jahmyr Gibbs, we touched on him a few moments ago, heading into his second year. David Montgomery, the acquisition from last offseason, looks to build upon what he did as a 1,000-yard rusher. Craig Reynolds, Netflix, is back in the fold as well. He just seems to be always right there when needed, because there were times when both Gibbs and Montgomery were nicked up over the course of the season, and you can't blame them. As much as a workload as both of them were getting over the course of last year, you almost kind of need that third guy ready to roll, and Craig Reynolds was always there to step up when they needed him to be. And then some depth pieces in Jamar Jefferson, who's been around for a couple off seasons, Zonovan Knight, who they picked up in free agency, and
the Z-Man.
The Z-Man, and then Baki, the kid from Utah, who can play both offense and defense, will compete for some depth at running back as well. Now, Bill, I saw something the other day where back in 2004, so going back 20 years ago, there were more than 10 running backs who, over the course of the season, rushed for over 1,600 yards in a season. Last season,
Wow.
You want to guess how many did that last season?
0.
One, Christian McCaffrey.
McCaffrey, okay.
And McCaffrey got paid, so there you go.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show how much the value of the running back position has changed over the last couple of decades. It's a completely different league. It's a passing league now. Don't tell the Lions that, though, because they utilize their running backs just as well as any other team in this league. And you've got at least two guys who can go off for 1,000 yards each without notice, in David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And I think the Lions do a really nice job of keeping both guys fresh by mixing in a lot of different play packages and rotations and what have you. This sure seems like a pretty solid group of guys in the backfield. What do you think?
It does. And Vaki is the wild card for me because I think he's going to be an ace on special teams, but I think they're going to find some specialty plays for this guy. And if he can play defense, he's hard hitting and he's going to take on opposing tacklers head on. And if Montgomery needs a breather, and they're looking for kind of a power running attack, Vaki could be the guy, So it's all about versatility and giving those opposing defenses a whole bunch of fits. And basically every player that you're going to see out there for the Lions this year has the ability to create at least one form of a matchup mismatch, for opposing defense with something that they can bring. So that's really exciting. I hope Craig Reynolds can make the team again. I think it's just going to have to be, very limited in terms of what we're going to see from him probably at this point. But I think these are guys that are going to have big roles on special teams. I really do.
And I can tell you for sure that my wife would love it if Craig Reynolds could still have a roster spot, regardless of what that looks like. And even if it's a practice squad, at least as long as he continues to be with the Lions organization in some way, shape, or form, I think the wife would be more than happy about that. But
Mhm.
it's not the way that the NFL has gone, as I mentioned over the years, valuing the running back position, but it's still a winning formula to where if you are able to dominate that time of possession, keep your defense on the bench and keep them rested up for when the other team takes the field. That's a winning formula in this league. And I think having a solid running game, we already know that the offensive line is just as solid as any unit in the NFL. And to have that level of synergy amongst those levels of the offense and to be able to chew up that time of possession and keep some stress off your quarterback by not having to drop back as many times. I think that's definitely something that the Lions have figured out how to best take advantage of. And it's proven that if you're able to dominate that time of possession more often than not, of course, there's outliers, but that's how you win football games in this league, even today and heading into 2024.
Yeah, yeah, and it really just comes down to offensive coordinators just really running some of these running backs to death. You know, a lot of times the way salaries and contracts worked back in 2004 was, now think about fantasy football too, with all the running backs that went super high, and oh, don't touch a quarterback, don't touch a receiver until round 3 or 4, whatever it was. Um, these running backs got paid. They did. But then Adrian Peterson and LaDainian Tomlinson are basically the two outliers for anyone that was even effective past the age of 33, 34, and you could even say, well, really, how effective was Adrian Peterson when he was with the Lions that, what, 1 year or whatever
I'm
it
sure
was?
there's some fans out
You know,
there, even some of the more astute Lions fans, that probably forgot he was ever in the Honolulu Blue.
yeah, yeah. So, well, we do want to forget those years because those were Quintricia years.
Quintricia, yes.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
there you have
So,
it. Over the last probably 3 or 4 episodes, we have covered every position group. We've highlighted every player that's going to be heading into training camp, and that's pretty much how the roster is going to stay until we start seeing roster cut downs. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of activity from a personnel standpoint. So it was fun to hit on each of the position groups and kind of get a look at what we're going to expect heading into this year. So we will see what happens moving forward. One thing I do want to hit on, Phil, while we have a moment, is the
mhm.
numbers came back from the NFL draft that was, of course, held here
Yeah.
in Detroit this last year. And it was stated that there was a $213 million economic benefit to the city of Detroit and the immediate surrounding areas because of the draft from this year. And we said back when it happened that there were attendance records that were blown to pieces with the draft in Detroit this year. But another bit of good news that the city of Detroit can never get enough of, Phil, is the economic impact that resulted from the draft.
Without a doubt. And I mean, it was incredible to be down there and to see everything. Um, the thing to me that was so outstanding was walking around at midnight closer to like Hart Plaza, A, feeling safe, right? But B, seeing all the businesses, all the activity, all the smiling faces, all the people having fun and a solid time. And it listen, I know it's like, oh, Detroit's back, Detroit, or whatever, but like there were many times where I felt like I was in like Chicago or something. And I had to keep reminding myself, I am in Detroit. This is a Detroit that, going back to when Ford Field opened, there was nothing to do down there. And the impact that we have seen over the years in this area and the goodwill that we have with the Lions and the stadiums and everything else that's going down there is amazing. But just the fact that the surrounding area of Detroit is seeing such a hardcore financial windfall because of this event. Thank you, NFL, for coming by. Massive success, obviously. Um, can't ask really for a Super Bowl necessarily because I know it's the climate and such like that. We need an NBA All Star game. I think that's the next one that we need. We need to have that weekend here, even though, again, I know it's going to be super cold come February when we play it. And I know the Pistons have just
Doesn't
been
matter. They just
out of
held
the
it in
radar, but
Indianapolis last season, and it's no warmer in the
good
middle of
point.
February than it is here.
Good
It's a
point.
matter. It's
But
a matter of do they want to do it or not.
I think that's the next thing that we need here, and I think we would show out for it. And then you know what? Listen, the draft's gonna be in Green Bay next year. First of all, FTP. If you know those,
Yep. If you know, you know.
you know. And great for that area. I don't think people are going to have as much fun. I just don't think there's as much to do, as much to walk. It's a very small town, right? Lambeau's cool, and I know that's where it's going to be at. Let's roll Detroit back in 5, 6, 7 years, whenever we've got out of the cities, and let's get it again. And hopefully, we'll have a Super Bowl championship before the next time we get a draft.
Amen, brother. Couldn't have said it better myself. We are out of time on this episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. Thrilled that you could be once again navigating this long, treacherous offseason along with us. We can't wait to chat with you again next week. For Phil Byrne across the way, Vince Progar saying good morning. Go Lions, forward down the field. Over and out.